And to all of you, and good evening to Mr. Lee, who's in Korea. So I think it's a little later for you. Thank you, sir. Thank you to all the panelists for joining us. And this is actually our third webinar on semiconductors we are doing in the last, I would say, 6 months or so, with the main objective that we, Elcina sir would like to, promote the manufacturing ecosystem to get more of the MSMEs on board, so that we build I would say, a stronger fiber of this whole thing, because this is like a network which has to be created. We had, some discussions yesterday on this, and we have a very, very eminent list of panelists. We, of course, have our president, Mr. Sanjay Agarwal, there with you, and Mr. Manwani, who will be giving some opening remarks. Mr. Manwani is, of course, as all of you know, he's an entrepreneur par excellence. At this age, he has launched a ATMP project to make memory devices, which is something really unique in the country. And very welcome, to all the other panelists, Mr. Pillai from Corning, Mr. Prasad from Allied, and of course Mr. Pranav Komarwar from Vedanta. Special welcome already given to you, sir, Mr. Lee from Korea, and it's been really a delight, that we have been engaging with Mr. Rajamani over the last few months, and we've had some very close discussions. We also had a discussion with the Joint Secretary very recently when we were there in the ministry, and that was just prior to the launch of this policy. So I think this policy is very attractive. But I would just like to be, because having been in this industry for so long now, we have a task on our hands to make this policy actually work for us. So that is something that I think always remains the uphill task for the investors and for the industrialists. But we have a bright future, and with that, I would like to hand over to Mr. Sanjay Agarwal to kindly give his opening remarks. We will welcome any of the chief guests who have been invited as and when they join. I believe there are some budget meeting going on, because in 3 days we have the union budget coming out. So whatever, if they join, it's fine. Otherwise, we will just do with what we have, and I think we'll take our agenda forward. Sanjay ji, over to you, sir, for your opening remarks, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Raju ji. Good afternoon and greetings to all panelists and industry colleagues participating in this webinar organized by Elcina with EFI Group. On behalf of Elcina, I convey my special thanks to our eminent panelists for accepting our invitation to participate in this webinar and encourage all the stakeholders who have joined this conference. I just received the message from MOS that because of budget time, some important meeting has come, and with the Honorable Minister and Joint Secretary, Mr. Saurabh Gaur may join us as soon as he is free from the Minister's office. MOS has conveyed his best wishes for the webinar. Elcina's mission is to support growth of value addition and expansion in domestic manufacturing, especially components including semiconductors. The webinar is one initiative to share and disseminate knowledge about this key segment of electronics. We're grateful to the industry leaders who have joined us as panelists to share their views and insights. India is one of the fastest growing major economies and is currently ranked 6th in the world. We are well placed to achieve our aspiration and potential to become a $5 trillion economy by 2025. In this, the target for manufacturing is $1 trillion, and electronic manufacturing, which is poised to touch about $400 billion by then. It has a major role to play in reaching this milestone. We sincerely appreciate MIT's valuable initiatives in formulating conducive schemes such as MCEPs, SPECs, EMCs, and PLI to realize its true potential. The recently announced comprehensive program for the development of sustainable electronics and display ecosystem in the country, with an outlay of Rs 76,000 crores, confirms the PM vision of Atmanirbhar Bharat and positioning India as a global hub of electronic system design and manufacturing. Display constitutes a significant portion of the total bill of materials of many high-volume electronic products. For instance, display accounts for over 25% of BOM in case of smartphones and over 50% in the case of LCD or LED TVs. As per present research, India's display panel market is estimated to be $7 billion, and further it could grow up to $19 billion by 2025. Current requirements are met exclusively through imports. Semiconductors and displays are the foundation of modern electronics, driving the next phase of digital transformation. Under Industry 4.0, semiconductors and display manufacturing is very complex and technology driven, and involves huge capital investments, high risks, long gestation, and payback periods, and rapid changes in technology, which requires significant and sustained investments. The benefits of establishing this industry to the nation will be manifold. Domestic value addition would be greater than $11 billion from fifth year onwards. New display export opportunities up to $10 billion from fifth year onwards. Domestic employment generation of more than 200,000 sustainable and high-tech jobs. Innovations in display-centric consumer products. The objective of this conference is to highlight this opportunity, and we are confident that with the active participation of companies like Vedanta, Tata Electronics, Applied Materials, Corning, as well as existing and new entrants in semiconductor technology, India will achieve greater self-reliance in fabrication of display products and bring manifold benefits to our industry and the country. With this, I now request Mr. Amrit Manwani to deliver the webinar, the welcome address of this webinar. Over to you, Mr. Manwani, please.
Thank you, Sanjay, and thank you, Raju, for your kind remarks. Good afternoon, everybody, and wish you all a happy Republic Day. It is an honor and privilege for me to welcome all of you, including our chief guest, as and when he joins, Honorable Minister Shri Rajiv Chandrasekhar ji and Joint Secretary Shri Saurabh Gaur ji, to this webinar on semiconductor and display products. Yesterday, with release of vision document for electronics manufacturing, the government has invigorated us to stand up to the challenge of 4x growth in domestic manufacturing and 10x growth in exports. The government has rightly mentioned that the country has to dream big to integrate in the global electronics supply chain. In the past 6 to 7 years, the leadership has recognized the importance of electronic manufacturing and introduced several incentive schemes like EMC, PLI, SPEC scheme, and now the latest India Semiconductor Mission policy initiative. But more importantly, for the first time, the government under the leadership of Shri Rajiv Chandrasekhar ji and Shri Ashwini Vaishnav ji has truly engaged the industry to recognize the challenges and ways to mitigate them through various reforms. Sir, Mr. Rajiv Chandrasekhar ji's focus on skilling in electronic manufacturing will encourage the Indian youth to take up manufacturing jobs rather than look for opportunities only in the service sector. With the ISM policy initiative by the government, we are certain the ecosystem for semiconductors and display systems and products will see tremendous growth in the right direction. My company, as Mr. Raju pointed out, has invested in the first ATMP project in Elsina cluster, and we hope to commence production by the end of this calendar year. Once again, I would like to welcome all our eminent panelists led by the moderator, Mr. Raju Manickam, whose entrepreneurial journey has been remarkable. No wonder as CEO of Tata OSAT, the industry is looking at his guidance to develop a robust ecosystem in semiconductors. The other panelists, Mr. Komarwar, Dr. Prasad Madhav Bhotla, Mr. Sudhir Pillai, Mr. Sung Hak Lee, Dr. Sudhir Kumar, are veterans in the display industry. We look forward to hearing from them and we also look forward to how they, what are their ideas of how to engage the SME sector in this domain, and how the challenges of, for example, the rare earth elements availability, how can those be addressed. Last but not the least, I would, we are also fortunate to have Dr. Ashwini Agarwal, who has been a mentor and guide to many of us in the industry. We hope that after today's deliberations, we will be more educated to take the country forward and to become an important manufacturing hub in the electronic sector. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Dr. Raja Manikam sir, I think you will have to be a little alert if the JS joins us. So we will, let you know. But I would now like to hand over to you to kindly, take forward the panel discussion on our topic today. And you already know, we've already introduced all the panelists. I would just like to hand over to you, sir, to please take the discussion forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Raju, and all the Elsina members to give me this opportunity. I just recently come to know of you, and I'm just thrilled that such an organization has lasted for so long. And certainly, I think we should take Elsina along the way as we progress in this. So thank you for the opportunity, and we have a very, very distinguished panel of actually this is the first time I see a panel which is quite diverse, right? So from materials to equipment to and other sectors. So it's very, very exciting because in my mind, all of this has to play together, right? In order to make India the favorite destination, if you may, for the next 10, 20 years of growth in semiconductors and displays and so forth. So thanks a lot for joining us, and each of you represent a very senior position within your company. So I hope you would share your candid thoughts about what you think and help guide Elsina and the rest of us. So with that, I would like to propose a few questions that will be very common to each of you. So maybe you could start with talking about your company a little bit, and then each one of you your vision, and then after that we'll start doing the questions. So I would first like to invite Mr. Pranav Kamarawa, CEO of the display and semiconductor business for Vedanta. Mr. Pranav.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, yes. Sorry to intervene, Mr. Raja. May I request you to be a little louder, or maybe bring your mic a little closer. Your voice is very feeble. Maybe because there are 330 people listening to you right now.
Sure.
I would really like your voice to go through.
Okay.
It's a little weak, so maybe the mic you can do. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Sorry for the disturbance.
I will do that.
Yeah. Thank you, Sanjay. Thank you, Elsina, for this opportunity. Thank you, Raj, for the brief, very good intro from Manwani ji about the sector update. What I'll do, I'll just quickly take you through a brief 4-5 slides presentation to give you my thoughts in terms of how Vedanta as a group is looking for. And not many of you may be knowing Vedanta from an electronics perspective. So it will also give an opportunity to know what we are looking at. And while the focus is on the MSME and other opportunities, you will find from the detail that there are plethora and immense opportunities which will develop from this pioneering initiative we have taken. So just let me know once you are able to see the screen.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. Yeah. I'll just take you through Vedanta as a group. In short, as you know, we are a We are different verticals, and largely we are known as a metal mining company. And there we are present into zinc, silver, aluminum, copper, lead, most of the base metals, as well as into steel. And we have another vertical in terms of form of oil and gas. We are 30% crude oil producer for the country. We are also present in power in big way, transmission as well as generation. And the last, what you can see, we have an electronics vertical. While it is not known here, but just to tell you some genesis here, we have Sterlite Technology, which is one of the largest fiber optic cable manufacturer globally. And we are present into this business for more than 20 years now. And we provide end-to-end data solutions. Secondly, we have a bit of presence in display, wherein there is a company called Avanstrate, which produces glass substrate. And in 2017, actually, we made a bid to enter into display space that time, but due to various reasons that could not fructify. So we entered and we acquired this company from Japan, where we have operations in Korea, Taiwan. And almost all the devices what you use, there is a substrate used in any LCD, and we are one of the prime suppliers for that. We also have recently acquired or in the process of acquisition of a leadership company into electronics manufacturing. And through this, we want to have a genesis of our electronics domain. As a group, we are more than $15 billion turnover. We contribute about 1.4% of India's GDP, and we have invested about $28 billion in various sectors. So we are typically a capital intensive investor, and we look for core technologies rather than more of a assembly kind of setup. Now, going to the vision, and as you can see, we want to have a presence here, and our logo says "Desh ki zarurat ke liye." So most of the entries Vedanta has made, we have made foray into the components where we had a lot of import dependence. We have entered into that strategic space. We not only reduced India's import, but also over a period achieved cost leadership, and we export in most of the products what we make. Here also we have a similar kind of vision. We want to enter into integrated fabs, both in semiconductor as well as into display. It will be a globally competitive facility. Maybe initially there'll be a support from government, but over a period through our operating excellence DNA, we'll achieve the cost leadership. Apart from capturing the domestic market, we have an export plan. And not only the fabs which will act as a core, but we want to achieve what is called as electronics hub. And that should bring in the entire ecosystem into play. Two ecosystems I'll focus, and then also a bit on the products what we want to focus on. That will give a way to realize what kind of opportunities would emerge. As you look at the semiconductor value chain, we have right now a very good presence in the last two, wherein we have a lot of EMS presence. We also have PCB and assembly segment growing very positively. And what we believe is that there is a good value add required, which can come from semicon fab and the OSAT facility. So this is one of the area where we'd like to target. And out of about $20 billion investment, about $8 to $10 billion investment we want to make into these two segments. In terms of product here, we believe that with the government initiative, the last EMS segment, there is a very good potential for a lot of electronics products getting manufactured here. And therefore, a lot of domestic demand will pick up. Make in India for the world concept will, put a lot of our products into global domain. In that, we found mobile, the consumer electronics, especially the PCs, and the auto would be the three driving segment. And our initial focus is to have the semiconductor fab components into this category. Coming to the display value chain, if you look at the opportunities, again, we have a lot of OEM, ODM, EMS play, but we want to play constructive role in panel fab. display panel fab and the modules, which complete the the largest value add segment into this. As earlier was narrated, 25% to 60% is the value add in any electronic components. And if you find today, all the products like smartphone, TV, IT, auto, everything is smart. So there is a need to have a touchscreen display. There is to have an driver IC running that. We find that both upstream and downstream, there are plethora of opportunities in each of the 5 product lines which we want to drive. And while we will act as a core, but we are looking at partnerships in all this domain. Some of the names you can see on the slides. So we are in discussion with about 40 companies, global companies, local companies. They can come and help us set up the base here in and around the fab. And as Vedanta, we have successfully demonstrated this across all our segments. We have developed 30 to 50 kind of companies in the cluster wherever we are operating. Now, sum up the opportunities, what I see, although the slides has a lot of numbers, but there are 4 clear opportunities I see which emerge. One on the equipment space. As you can see, our own investment of $20 billion and the component ecosystem, we believe $10 to $15 billion. This is the total spend on the project, and 60-70% of this will go into equipment. Largely, that is one of the space we identify that there's a lot of opportunity for equipment vendors to work with us, set up there, not only the equipment manufacturing, but the service support. And that these 2 segments can really drive a lot of growth. Secondly, there are about 150 odd companies we believe in the product space or in the components we will need, or in the other space which will develop as a part of this ecosystem. Third, we believe that design innovation, having the core ICs or the core display domain available in India, a lot of R&D setup can come up. This can give us a lot of patents filing locally, and India is a very fertile and entrepreneurship driven culture. So we believe a lot of opportunities can develop into this space. And fourthly, a lot of support services, enablers, I would say logistics, project management, and all kind of services. These are the 4 critical areas we foresee it can give a lot of opportunities for. And everywhere we can integrate global players, local players, MSMEs, and whatever programs Vedanta used to run, we can expand it into this domain. I think I'll take a pause here and hand it back to Raj for any questions or getting further into discussion.
Yeah, thank you, Pranav. I think that was very very informative, right? To understand what Vedanta. And I picked up, especially on the glass. I didn't realize that you guys have some very good technology on glass. One of the considerations moving forward for future is glass-based panel, advanced packaging type of material. So every day we learn something new about India, right? A lot of times people think about India as doing substandard products and so forth, but we are global leaders in many areas, right? Like you rightly pointed out, in some of the minerals and so forth, and also some of the technologies. So thank you, Pranav. I think very very opportune moment for Vedanta to get into this. Next, I would like to call Dr. Prasad, Group Head for Engineering, Display, and Flexible Technology Applied. Please go ahead, Prasad.
Yeah. First of all, good afternoon, and thank you, Elena, and all the panel members for giving me this opportunity to talk on from Applied Materials on this display fab. So when it comes to the display, so first when I saw the announcement from the government, I was pretty much happy because first thing is I have been working in the display industry for the past 15 years, and I have never seen any talk on the display fab in India, because always we see either Korea, China, Taiwan. So always most of the fabs are there. But this is something very much interesting and exciting for me personally also. And if you see the technology of the display, right? So it started in Japan, and after that things moved into the Korea and Taiwan and China now. So most of the display panel manufacturing is happening in Taiwan and China. So when it comes to the requirement stuff and all, when it comes to the applied materials, what we do, so we make the equipment for semiconductor and display fab requirements and all. So you might have heard about the chemical vapor deposition and then physical vapor deposition. These are the main processes which are being carried out in the display manufacturing flow, and applied material supplies this equipment to the global customers or global leaders in the display manufacturing industry. And we have our manufacturing facility in Taiwan for display. And also we have a design center in Bangalore, so where we have around 200 people working on the display designs for the equipment. And the name wise, if you see Applied Materials, it is not a materials company, but we do the materials engineering that our equipment will do the precision engineering on the materials so that those will be useful in making the display panel as well as semiconductor fabs and all. Yeah. So what else you want to know on this one? So maybe we can, I will pause here. I have not made any presentation due to my health, but yeah, we will look forward to the next round of discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Prasad. I think, one of the areas that I'm looking forward to, that in the next 10, 20 years will be, material research and advanced materials coming out of India through, people like Applied as well, right? Because there is a need for, the equipment and the materials to play together to create all these processes. So being in the same country, same location, and, building the expertise. So I'm just hoping that Applied will help some of our material suppliers to get to the next level of purity and the stability of those materials. Thank you, Prasad. I think it's it's best time to bring in Mr. Sudhir Pillai. He's the managing director of Corning. And Corning, again, not many people know because they're there everywhere. But I think it'll be good for Mr. Pillai to talk about his thoughts about India and his vision from Corning perspective. Please, Mr. Pillai.
Thank you, Dr. Raja, and thank you, Alcina, for giving us this opportunity. And I'm happy to share the stage with this eminent fellow panelist. We are participating with Alcina for the first time. Rather, we haven't participated with any electronics association till date. So it's apt to talk about Corning a bit. So let me take about 1 minute or so to talk about Corning, and then probably talk about the government incentives and what's our broad plan. So Corning, for the last 170 years, we have been enhancing people's life and transforming businesses and industries. And we have been doing this by inventing category defining products all across. And at core, what we do is we invent, we make and sell the products. And we have been so successfully doing this for the last 170 years. And the reason of having a super legacy is, I would say, two primary reasons. One is our deep knowledge about material science and unparalleled expertise in glass science, ceramic science, and optical physics. And the number two is our deep trust-based relationship with our customers, and along with them, we have been solving some of the toughest problems, the toughest technological problems that the customers had. And if you talk about our innovations include the first glass bulbs for Thomas Edison's electric light, the first low-loss optical fiber, the cellular substrate, which is the heart of a catalytic converter, the first damage resistant or a scratch resistant cover glass for the mobiles that we all use, and we all call it as Gorilla Glass. Coming closer to the home, we entered the Indian market in about 1980s to produce the cathode ray tube glass for TV industry. And this local production of CRT TV glass supported the advancement of the affordable TVs and got the TVs to all the drawing room in India. At this juncture, let me also tell you that we have been the science and the engineering powerhouse behind the revolutionary display inventions that we have been doing, including the LCD glass for the smartphones, the flat panel TVs, and the laptop computers, which made these inventions made all these products as a commonplace. So I'm really excited at this juncture about the announcements made by the government. We were already doing extremely well with Digital India, Make in India kind of plan. And what I learned is our electronic manufacturing has grown multifold in the last 5 years or so. And with this display and semiconductor incentive programs, I'm very sure that it will create a very conducive environment for companies like Corning to get their technologies to India also, to evolve the digital or display ecosystem in India. Over to you, Dr. Raja.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Pillai. Very, very informative, and what a vision! What a super legacy company, right? When I joined Tata, I just couldn't believe, the things that they've done, and it takes a lot to be a super legacy company. So thank you for your comments. Next, I would like to invite Mr. Sunghak Lee he's the CEO of TN Vision. He's talking to us from Korea. And Korea is always a very, a case study, right? It's, the last 30, 40 years has been phenomenal growth. And, you see them everywhere. I stay in an apartment complex in Chennai. And I'm happy to say that I have a few Korean friends here in the apartments, working for either Hyundai or something like that. So, they have their presence in all over India. There's many lessons I believe we can learn from, how Korea developed both, these very large companies as well as, a lot of small and medium enterprises, highly successful, leading edge, and they support the ecosystem. So over to you, Mr. Lee. Share your experiences and your thoughts.
Okay. Good afternoon. Okay, thank you for inviting this valuable webinar, and very congratulations, India start to discuss this kind of semiconductor display. Yeah, huge investment. So today, maybe 30 minutes ago, I sent some PowerPoint material to Mr. Saxena. Can you upload the file?
Sandeep, do you have it?
I think it's there with Dr. Sudhir, because he'll be sharing it. I cannot share it from my system.
I can share. I can share.
Thank you.
We're seeing it. Yeah.
So, Mr. Lee, you have to just let me know when you want to click the another one. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I work. My first company is Applied Materials. Yeah, dry etch. I work for process engineer in Applied Materials. Polysilicon and metal etch. Then moved to Tucson Mecatech. That company made OLED equipment. At the time, I sold my small R&D system to IIT Kanpur. That's because I know Dr. Kumar, in the system. Then moved to solar system company, German company, Ludenau, CVD company, and then moved to Korean company, equipment company, IPS, Wonic IPS. Then from 2012, I made my company mainly equipment making and consulting and system design. So today let me share some very simple information of Korean situation. Actually, at first, at 1999, I started my job in applied materials. At the time, Samsung also very initial, not actually initial. Actually, Samsung started 1980 in Korea, Semiconductor, was 1999. That time is a little bit boom up of the semiconductor business in Korea. Samsung and at the time Hyundai Semiconductor, now changed it to Hynix. Actually now Samsung and Hynix in Korean company and also TSMC dominate semiconductor market. Actually Korea mainly memory and then flash NAND. Not actually foundry case, TSMC dominate the market. But the problem is always our weak point is equipment and chemical and component. Actually last year Japan stopped to export some very critical chemical, EUP and also PR, photoresist. At the time, it's a very Korea, Samsung and Hynix, very difficult time to develop the critical material. So Korean companies, Samsung and Hynix, and also TSMC, also dominate the market, but actually ecosystem of component, chemical, and equipment is very poor still. And then please go to next page. And then for OLED industry, so we Korean company learn how can we operate the system, how can we make business in the equipment market. So actually yellow company is a Korean company, Invenia and Wonic IPS, LG PRI, and many other company. They made a system and export to Chinese customers. The semiconductor period, we have no chance because US make the market and then only transport to Japan. Japan played a very nice role in semiconductor. Not actually now is Korea and Taiwan company lead the market, but maybe more than 10 years ago, 20 years ago, Japan dominates the market. And then for LCD industry, a Korean company at the time start to to make system, yeah, and then export to Chinese customer and also Korean customer, Taiwanese customer, and then we learn. Then we have chance in OLED system. You know, OLED system is very huge, and there's no standard type. Actually, very customizing system. So maybe a Japanese company and US company is not much flexible, yeah, in OLED equipment. So Korean people, yeah, very fast and then flexible. Yeah, so I believe this OLED and Korean business manner is very good matching. So yeah, in OLED, some Korean company, especially equipment company, getting momentum. And then this next page. And then now we move to every company move to a secondary battery. Actually, we learn from semiconductor, LCD, and OLED, and then now we have chance in a secondary battery, everywhere, and globally, car maker and battery maker, everybody, want to make good better secondary battery. So in Korea, we for equipment company, we this is a stable growth chance, and for a chemical company, this is a new chance to enter the market. Actually, Korean chemical company is not big. Actually, technology is not high comparing European makers and US and Japan. So we learned this very good focusing method from semiconductor to secondary battery for 40 years. So please, next page. So last 2 years, Korea, we have struggled for the chemical and component and equipment issue with Japan and China. So we know our weak point, and also we know our strong point. So today I want to introduce to Indian members, what Indian people, what Indian government, what Indian companies can approach. What is a strong point of India? What is a weak point in India? Today, I want to say this one. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Lee, for sharing very candidly. The points that I got out of this was, Samsung, for example, started in the 80s, getting into semiconductor, and it took like 40 plus years, right, to become a powerhouse. But also, I think in your presentation, you mentioned about the other industries that came about, right? Whether it's equipment or chemicals and so on, right? The peripheral industries that got benefited by getting into semiconductors. So I think one of the takeaways from your presentation is semiconductor has this effect of creating other industries. Like, for example, the materials and the batteries, and everything is some kind of a technology involved. Right? Very good. Thank you, Mr. Lee. Next, I would like to call upon Dr. Sudhir Kumar. He's the COO of the National Center for Flexible Electronics. Please, Dr. Sudhir.
Thank you, Dr. Raja. Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, let me share again. I hope you can see my slide also.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Raja, and greetings to one and all. Also, I would like to take the opportunity to thank Elsina and EFBI for inviting me at this platform to share the views. As most of the important and valuable points are already covered by our panelists, but let me touch upon one of the important points on building the ecosystem like Lee was as hinting to. That is very important for our country perspective, and how the National Center for Flexible Electronics, IIT Kanpur, can help and support here. Because IIT Kanpur here, like Lee mentioned in early days, I think in 2004, 2005, made the decision with one of the display company called Samtel and Corning, which my Sudhir was explaining. Actually, he may explain in a little more detail, to have a facility where the industry can do the industrial research and develop the product or the test the product or the test the material at a place which are useful for the industry, especially for the display industries. So a lot of money came from the display industry at that time. The Samtel, Videocon, Corning, they were having the joint hubs in the country making the CRTs. At that time the center was developed, and at that time after that there was a discussion between government, industry and the academia. What are the upcoming technologies in the display sector? At that time it came out that yes, moving at that time towards the LCD and the plasma and going to the OLED and the furthermore, which I would basically share briefly. That's how the center came in, and that facility got developed. Is a beautifully state of art the system. Now coming to the building the ecosystem, which is the topic, an ecosystem in the country. What the National Center can do, if you see the slide in the display, definitely the NC-Flux CIT Kanpur can support in sharing the knowledge and in deploying the indigenous product development program required by the industry, because the facility is totally equipped now. Okay, there's a system in place, there's a characterization system in place, there's a testing system in place, and a team of the experts which is working let's say last 15 years in this sector. Okay, designing and prototyping is very well possible at the center. That can be done for the India perspective, because if you go for the product, taking the technology in from any country or any player, you need to do something which is very specific to the country if you want to be in the race continuously, or do something country specific. The third thing is building and training the talent pool, which might be very well required by the industries, like our fellow colleague, the Pranav was saying. When the display industry is coming in, many industries are coming in the game, or the Tata, the in semiconductor, the country may be needing a greater support for the talent pool. Basically, there is no base exist in our country, so there's some need to do something in that place. So building and training the talent pool for display industry especially, I already had a team of experts working in the center in this area of the display, so that center can support for sure. Supporting the building indigenous materials and testing required by the display. See the display, like Lee was saying, although he was what I gathered from his presentation, that Korea is a leader in manufacturing, is still face the challenge in the materials. So there is a certain thing, certain focus need to be in the materials in the country, so that basically something can be done in that sector. Screening and testing the substrate, like Sudhir Pillai was hinting to, is very, very important point. Basically, you can select the substrate, but how to screen and what to use and when to use, that is also very well required. So that center can support certainly. The last but not the least, center also conduct a short course. That's I am just giving as a information this point. Every year in the area of displays and flexible electronics, center can support in conducting of specialized short course required by the industry in the area of displays, or even in semiconductor displays. For sure, we have a a greater amount of the data. Okay, so knowledge generation, talent pool, designing, prototyping, driving electronics. There's a scheme. There's a basically the 50% we say the part of the display is the driving schemes, driving electronics. That the greater work, a lot of things need to be done, and the center has a lot of knowledge and materials in this sector. Center also started the materials evaluation part, especially for upcoming technologies for like OLED, or I would say the furthermore the printed OLED. We have a vision in the center to go for printable OLEDs, where you can print the OLEDs on a flexible substrate or in any substrate, choice of the substrate, and the display. We have the demonstrator, and then I think that time to come that market will visualize the flexible substrate getting printed in near future. Next, about the facility, I just want to share because Dr. Raja asked basically to share that what the facility you have. We have a facility, R&D facility. I think this is the only facility in the country right now. Second one is coming up based in IIT Madras, which is the OLED manufacturing facility, the display manufacturing facility. But this is not only the R&D. This can produce certain amount of prototypes. Basically, this is the semi-industrial scale cluster tool what we have at IIT Kanpur. So we can do the OLED manufacture, the fabrication, OLED characterization, or lifetime testing, which is also very, very important for the display. Towards the commercialization, what we do that we work with the industry with the design and for the proof of concept and giving them the prototypes. So if you see in the picture in the left hand side, we have an evaporation tool which our applied colleague was saying that the root of the chemical vapor deposition or physical vapor deposition. So we have the facility, existing facility at the center, and going towards the solution processes and printing the displays using the R2R or roll-to-roll printable platform. That is our dream, and I'm happy, I'm glad to share with the audience and our panelists that this is a unique facility in the world right now, which IIT Kanpur has as a pilot production kind of facility at the center, which is roll-to-roll printable facility. Industries are welcome to use the facilities available at the center at IIT Kanpur. Now, just giving you taking a minute about the center. This National Center for Flexible Electronics is a bridge between academia and industrial ecosystem. So we are working in materials development, equipment design and development, and the prototype development. So the IITs has a very strong connect with the academic ecosystem, but other side is the industrial ecosystem. So somebody has to fill the gap, which the center is established I would say in 2014 with the support of the MITI, Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, and the center is fully functional. So I would give a pause here, Dr. Raja, and then I'll come when you have further question.
Thank you, Dr. Sudhir Kumar. Very interesting. I certainly have heard about this reel-to-reel printing technology that you guys are pioneering. Certainly, taking it to market, and maybe there is something there where industry can pick it up and build a large business around that. So it's very unique. Most of the successes, right? Whether you look at TSMC or I'm sure in Korea and China as well, that the academia or the institute, right, like ITRI, for example, right, played a very, very important role in bringing TSMC into fruition, right, in the early 80s and so forth, right, and certainly Japan has tremendous. So I think that the key is to figure out, how the companies can actually take that, and your center can fine tune that relationship building, right? Because it is tough, right?
Yes, very true, Dr. Raja.
Yeah. So I hope, so one of the thoughts is, whether small and medium enterprises are a lot more flexible, right, than the larger companies actually, right? So maybe perhaps, some support for them, to take this up and take a risk, right? Because larger companies tend to avoid taking a risk, especially in the manufacturing side of things. Whereas smaller companies can actually get into it. So thank you again. Thanks for all the panelists. I'd like to start with some questions, if you may. We are very well known. I mean, India has provided resources for engineering, development, IT, BPOs, call centers, and you name it, right? Anything related to people, people power and, the numbers in people that we need, right? India has been in the forefront, for a lot of companies, large companies, India has been the back office in that sense, right? Developing and so on. And over time, with the confidence that these companies have with their Indian organizations and the service companies that support this, I see more and more engineering and R&D type of work as well, coming to India as well. So, over time, my guess is, their Indian entity will become very, very strong with the talent and so forth, right? So the question is, manufacturing, right? India has been trying to bring, manufacturing to India. It hasn't come as expected in a large way. I'm sure there are, snippets of it over time. So I would like to go around the panelists and get their views of, with the new announcements in the policies towards encouraging manufacturing, very specifically on manufacturing as well. I would like the panelists to share their views on what their companies are thinking moving forward in the next 10, 20 years. And what is it that, will be a catalyst or a spark that can, make those decisions, make them real. So I would like to start with Mr. Pillai from Corning. Please go ahead and share your views.
Thank you, Dr. Raja. So let me talk about the display first. So display, we believe in a future which is more reliant on displays, would be like the human connections that will make the human connections more, will enable the human connections. And with that as a statement, let me come to how we have been looking at India and how we have been investing in India. So let me give you a reference. So let me give you a reference from our optical communication business. So Corning's optical communication business, we offer the optical fiber cable and the connectivity solution. And we have played a very crucial role in the India's growing telecommunication market. So we entered by supplying the first optical fiber in 1980s. And then when the revolution actually started, when we all started consuming data, that's when we set up our own plant at Chakan, Pune in 2011. And today that plant is one of the most successful and one of the plants which not only supplies to India, but to our global customers. So we have been consistently investing in India as we see those growth triggers happen. As far as coming to closer to display, that I'm very confident that given our expertise in precision glass innovation and decades of experience enabling the overall display industry and the long-standing customer relationship, Corning will continue to play that vital role in supporting and developing this ecosystem. For display, we have a very clear strategy we call as a disciplined growth. And what's disciplined growth? We continuously look at how the global display industry and the end markets are evolving. And we strongly believe that this government incentives that recently been announced, which has been recently announced, will create this global display industry to start coming to India. And once that happens, naturally, a company like Corning would have to come and co-locate with those customers, because that has been our strategy globally. Over to you, Dr. Raja.
Great. I think the key word is co-locate, right? So once you have the industry coming in, right? So all the other suppliers, they have to co-locate, right? In the engineering side, we call it co-design, right? Co-development, so and so forth, right? So then all the other companies come together. So I think the future. So what you're saying is, get someone who to actually start building the displays here, and Corning would be more than happy to come in and co-locate. So I think this will be a segue to Vedanta to share your views on this, and why did Vedanta pick displays? Is there something unique that you bring to the table? And why do you think this has been the appropriate time, and your thoughts?
Right. Thank you, Raj. In fact, we have been one of the competitor to Corning. Definitely, we will also cooperate with them need be. My view on we have been a through and through manufacturing setup, Raj. I mean, Vedanta does not get into assembly or get into low tech segment. So driving the DNA, right from our chairman Anil Agrawal ji, he believes that yes, manufacturing is the place to be. Being a first generation entrepreneur and 3 generations now, he has been driving core manufacturing. But I would say right now, especially in electronics, there has been some of the enablers. Like as you said, if you look at demand aggregation, the mobile 4 years back, we were not there. Today, we are the second largest mobile manufacturer. I mean, in fact, TV, we need close to 35 million TVs per annum. We'll be, having a target of, let's say, 25 million laptops per annum. And each of the electronic device, as you say, needs display. More and more smart displays. So with better driver ICs and better semiconductor space. But this demand aggregation has happened now with a lot of factors getting into play. And therefore, I believe there is an impetus on getting into value addition. First of all, anywhere the assembly section would start, like an EMS play, which is not much of value add, but that is needed. And I feel that critical mass has come because of, thanks to government's excellent schemes. The PLI driven scheme, especially in low capital segment, that has really driven a lot of assembly plants. That's one driver. And today the demand is huge. I mean, our chairman always says that even if you exclude China and add all the bordering countries to India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, this itself is 1/3 of world population. And in India itself, you don't find even 1 TV per house. Forget 2 TVs, 3 TVs in the other developed countries. In fact, 500 million people do not have a smartphone. Imagine that gets converted. That's domestic demand I'm talking about. So this is first aspect which is required. Then comes, as Pelij also said, how we bring it to a place. And for that aggregation benefit he was telling, people will migrate only when there is a core mass. Display industry can only come if you have core fabs. Semiconductor industry can only come if you have core fabs. They act as anchors. None of the place, this industry has come up without these anchors. So I think another enabler from government has been an excellent policy. We find the policy is really good for the fab setup. And if we have, now the third dimension therefore now is to get into quick movement. Like one is you can do invention on your own and take 20 years, but other way is to have a proper tie-up and learn from the masters. So I would say that technology partnerships, that's a third dimension which is getting driven. With the first two, there is enough, I would say, passion with the outside world, the global conglomerate. They see India as a place now. Government has walked the talk, they have come forward with, and now it's their turn to demonstrate it back. And these are the factors I see, definitely India will not only see this, but as I told you, Indians are quite enterprising. So you may find very cheap or cost-effective TVs, mobiles getting manufactured here. and getting exported from here. So we are very good in forward backward integration and getting that things done. What has happened in automotive, as you know, even Hyundai plant in this one exports 5 lakh cars cheaper than what Hyundai can manufacture in Korea. So this is one of the example. I started my first journey with John Deere and company. That tractor was 2.5 times costlier than Mahindra when we first joined, started the plant in Pune. Today it is number 3 in India in terms of market share, 20 years. But it is possible here. And these are the factors I believe India will definitely see a very positive growth. And it's a need of the hour. See, if we don't do this, we need this equipment, but we can't have an import bill of this core component more than the oil imports what we do. So it's a now or never kind of scenario. People are geared up. I find a lot of vibrancy. I'm getting 40 companies wanting to tie up with us one way or the other. And with this, lastly, I would say that, but it's not a short-term game. This is not an industry you can make anything in 4 or 5 years, unless you have a 20-year, 30-year horizon, have a patience to put in that capital. We can't, expect return. And there are companies in that mindset. Therefore, I feel this time we will see. To answer your this one, we will also see a lot of Indian companies coming as a big, a major conglomerates. And you will find some of those brands.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Pranav. And I think, hopefully, some of those that you talk about become true very soon. As you say, it's a long-term play, and money going into this is hard because the returns will take a much longer time. But then it's a very stable business over longer term as well, and it can also grow very rapidly, right? I mean, I've been in companies where I was in an early startup, for example, right, in manufacturing, and they became $1 billion company, less than 8 years, right? 7 years, 8 years, So because the market is good, and if you're good at what you do, you can dominate. And I think the other point that you brought out about cost structure, right? I think is very relevant. I heard the same thing about during Nokia during their heydays in the late 90s and early 2000 when Nokia was very big in Sri Perumbudur. I used to visit them, and they told me that their cost structure in Sri Perumbudur was actually better than their large factory in China, right? And not only that, even quality, right? There's always this question mark about quality in India, right? And that's another myth that that we need to actually dispel, from a lot of our people, right? We cannot be global leaders, unless we have the quality mindset. Yeah. And we do, right? I think the private sector is very well aware of it. And in whatever you do, I'm sure you cannot be a global number 2 in your area, Vedanta, right? Without able to deliver quality products. So I truly appreciate that. Hopefully in that journey, you will bring some of the smaller companies to as part of your ecosystem. So I mean the same question I would like to ask Applied. How do you see this manufacturing policies and so on impacting your decisions in supporting or seeding some of the companies? So Prasad,
which applied person are you looking out for?
Sorry?
Which applied person are you looking out for?
whoever talks first.
We have been waiting for the past 15 years because before I think anyone has dreamed of display fab. 15 years back itself, we started our display design center in Bangalore, and at that time itself we were working on the display equipment and precision materials which are required for the CVD, PVD and other evaporation process equipment design. And also we have a field service organization, so who are talented in doing this maintenance stuff, and then fab support, software, electrical, mechanical support, even the device equipment, metrology support and all. So all these people, okay, we have the design center and the field service organization, which is at present catering the needs of our customers in China, Taiwan, Korea, Japan, at these areas. So we already have this, the talent availabilities already exist. We are actually eagerly waiting, as Ashwini mentioned. So now I think we feel that the time has come that we could able to take forward this once the dream of display fab comes true. As the Praveen he mentioned that, okay, I think they are really getting up with the having tie-ups with the 40 companies and all. So we hope things will go in a better way. And at the same time, as I also agree with Pranav that display, I think manufacturing, it is not just one, okay, one person or the one organization can alone do. I think there should be a very good support from the ecosystem, which is very much vital, because it is a huge investment, and minimum 10 years of waiting period is required, and all these fabs should run more than 80 to 90% uptime. So there should be a continuous availability of materials, continuous availability of glass, electricity, water, everything. So and also I think the equipment should run without any unscheduled delays and all. So all these things are very much vital to make this display fab a successful stuff. And also we are pretty much new to few of the things like a clean room, right? So this is something which we need to also culturally also we need to make some kind of a changes into it, because a clean room is a 10,000 and 1,000 class clean room is very much vital to have this display fab to avoid the impurities which are coming into it. For semiconductor, it is even more stringent. So, but this clean room availability and maintainability of this clean room is also pretty much vital. Yep. And applied, yeah, we are waiting, and we always provide our support in terms of the know-how which we have, the talent pool availability we have, and also the field support organization which already set up here. And okay, one thing I will make is there is no display in the world which was going through applied materials equipment. So that is how the applied materials penetration into the display equipment business. Yeah, go to you.
I could add that there's probably some Indian involved in some technology in this in those displays that goes out to the world as well. Almost in everything, every company, right, has some Indian contribution in there. Although we're probably in the back, not in the front. Thank you, Prasad. I know, Applied Ventures was one of the first. One of the first investments in India was in my previous company, Dassault. And I know how long they've been waiting for the big manufacturing to come. And they're very, very supportive. I'm the manager. So hopefully, you be part of the ecosystem. I think this is going to be real this time. So we'll all make that a success. Thanks, Applied, and thanks, Prasad. So Mr. Lee, I have a very important question that Elcina members may be very keen to understand, right? How in Korea, right, and it's also very true in Japan, there's a lot of these little companies, right, supporting these larger companies, right? Samsung probably has, I don't know, thousands of, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of companies that specialize in one thing, right? And then they support, right? So how do they survive? How do they build that core businesses? Are they people from Samsung who go out and start something like this, and then kind of Samsung still has the umbilical cord with them, and fund them, support them, to share roadmaps? How is this done in a small country like Korea? Very, very highly successful. There's something there for us to learn. Please share your thoughts.
Yeah, actually, as far as I know, yeah, Korea, Japan, Taiwan, China has different, yeah, system. Yeah, so Korea actually, yeah, you know, Korean big company we call Jaeger, yeah, Samsung, yeah, Hyundai, LG. As a Korean government, yeah, build up this kind of big company, and big company, yeah, they support, yeah, small company. But actually, yeah, if at first it's not successful, but yeah, now, yeah, Korean industry is globally, yes, very, yeah, very successful, right? So a small company automatically, yeah, yeah, follow, yeah, in the global trend. But Taiwan, Japan, yeah, that government cannot support, yeah, big company. They initially they support, yes, a small company, small and medium-sized company, yeah. But in Korea and China, yeah, government to support, yeah, big company first, and then big company, yeah, support small company. It's a different situation.
Okay, so I understand a little bit on this, right? You have some more thoughts, or? Okay, so you know, for example, right, what I notice is in Korea, right, you know, you probably, you know, the Samsungs and the LGs and all that are these big companies, and then they have this support, and then now those companies are now going out themselves, right? So I think the key word you talked about was, you know, global, right?
Yeah.
So I think one of the concerns, or, you know, when we go into technology, right, whether it's displays or semiconductor or equipment and so on, right, we have to look at it as global, right? I have personally worked with a few handler companies, right, the robotics and handler companies for the test, chip testing, and wafer probing, right, wafer probing equipment that comes from Korea. And these are, you know, relatively, entrepreneurial, small companies. They started with, somebody who's got this idea. They worked in some big companies. They came out, and then they, you know, or they worked in like Amcor or somewhere like that. And then they saw this Japanese equipment, and then they kind of, you know, started to make those kind of equipment as well. And they now, actually, even from a technology standpoint, are probably world class, right? So I think, you know, one of the learnings is, you know, that I hear from, especially from Korea, is, you know, think global, right? And they've been, you know, extremely successful, right? I mean, you go everywhere in the world, right? You'll hear Samsung or LG, but you also hear a lot of these smaller companies, you know, that support this ecosystem. So I think the message to Elcina is, you know, always have a global thought in your plans, right? You know, let's say, you know, you'll be supporting Vedanta or Tata or somebody, right? You know, at the same time, right, you know, you want to think about, you know, globally, how do you market yourself? How do you go out there and build that? Because that's what is going to sustain, right? We have too long, we always be looking at the Indian market, right? And you know, and Indian market is usually captured by foreign companies rather than our own homegrown companies. So I think, you know, you start building them to be global from day one. So one of the thoughts from here that I hear from Mr. Lee is, you know, to be successful for a smaller company, you're going to be thinking global. Thanks, Mr. Lee. So the next question I have, you know, for some of these companies. So do you see any first mover advantage, right? If you come into India and you know, take advantage of some of the policies and so on. So Pranav, maybe, you know, you can tell us, you know, what do you see, you know, to get this going? Is there a first mover advantage versus the incumbents that may take longer, right? What I see is, the entrepreneur or, the guy who's willing to take the risk, does he has a, advantage over someone who will think about it and maybe come 3-4 years later? Is there a first mover advantage?
Thanks. Yes, I truly believe, yes, there is a first mover advantage because primarily this is a very, very capital intensive industry. And unless until there is a good support from government time and again, it is not easy to make an entry. While I would not say only that is sufficient, but that is one of the necessary condition. So whoever comes forward with initial 2-3 fabs in each of the sector would have advantage. Market side, I would not say, because here market is available. Today also, India has a market of 10 fabs. It was there. It will increase only. It's not going to decrease. And 1 or 2 fabs here is not going to saturate that. But from a support perspective, yes. From a competition perspective, yes, they will have a better learning curve. Because as I told you, it's a long-term game. And having a good partner is very, very, I would say, sufficient condition. After the necessary, the sufficient, you have to have a very credible partner. It's not possible to reinvent the wheel or learn what they have done in 20 years or in 40 years, what our friend Lee was suggesting. We cannot do it. So it is better, even if you have to pay a premium to that, it is worth paying it. But get into right partnerships and get going. And as you know, once you get started, I'll again make my point. Indians are very, very enterprising. They are very creative, innovative people. So once they get into something here on their own, there are a lot of opportunities they will develop on. And definitely that initial companies will have the prime mover advantage.
Thank you. Thank you, Pranav. The next question is to Mr. Pillai. Obviously, right, you operate in multiple countries, right? Some of them you have very large footprints and so on, and certainly in India too. What do you see unique about India, and what is it that, we can do, moving forward as well to attract, maybe material research, material manufacturing in a larger way, right? What, or maybe, geographically located, or maybe political, what is it that might be an advantage for a company like a Corning in India?
Okay, so let me answer that in 2 phases. Why it's attractive for Corning to be in India, and second, what will keep it more attractive going forward also. That's what you
Yes.
said, Dr.
Yes.
So I strongly believe that we are at a once in a generation inflection point, India, because of all those, always said demographic dividends and all those things. So it's a huge market, and the market which has now got, it's getting matured, and the next 2 to 3 decades is for India. So that's that's making it very attractive. What will make it more conducive for companies like Corning is one, a scheme, a incentive, program like what recently been announced by government, and a consistency in the programs that it's getting rolled out, or how it's been rolled out. The execution is the devil is in the execution, as they say. That's where we will keep this market, or rather that keeps this market more attractive for us.
Okay.
Over to you, Dr. Raja.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Pillai. I think the point there is, consistency and stability in policies and tax regimes and stuff like that, right? Because for manufacturing, that's very, very critical.
Absolutely.
We cannot, we change of governments and states, and we cannot keep oscillating like that, right? So the countries that are, smaller countries, they're very successful in bringing manufacturing. For example, Malaysia or Singapore and so on, right? Are because most of the manufacturing companies gravitate towards stability, right? And
Yes.
clarity in the laws and taxes and so forth. So I think that's a good point. We're probably coming to an end, but I would like to ask Dr. Sudhir, right? To me, right, there is a lot of gems in the IITs and other institutes, right? I call it, a diamond in the rough, right? Is there, right? Whether you take IIT Bombay, IIT Chennai, IIT Kanpur, and so forth, right? I'm an alumni of IIT Kharagpur as well. We announced at National Semiconductor, we donated some of the older equipment to Kharagpur as well. But what do you think, right? We need to do, from an industry standpoint to, explore this, right? When I say explore, right, explore more seriously, right? As a consortium, building up, funding, and actually taking it to market, right? What is there, what do you see in your experience, right? You would have, I'm sure, by now, right, you would be expecting, 10 companies to take some technology from IIT Kanpur and build companies out of it. What do you think is things that needs to be fixed, or can be helpful in taking the research out into the real world?
So thank you, Dr. Raja, asking this question. Very important, very pertinent. And the first thing is that everybody was wanting to come out this policy. The policy is out now. That is the starting point. Basically, the industry needs supports, definitely, and the academia also need the energy in the market. Basically, we have the plan for upcoming technology, and industry has their own plan. So I think the energy is there, and thanks to Elsina to organizing such a wonderful 2, 3, 4 sessions, so that awareness to people are getting to know. The answer to your question is, you are also the IITM, the alumni, so you are the veteran. Answer is, and honestly, I'm saying it is the collaborative approach. That is the answer. You take the example of any successful country, being in US, being in Korea, being in China, like what they have done. It has only happened because they worked together. The academia cannot do everything alone, and industry cannot do everything alone. Okay, so earlier what was not there in our country, I think that basically there was a lot many effort. There was individual labs in the professors, or in the small department and center. Now the center of excellence are also there to serve the specific job. So in terms of the MSMEs, the center like us or other center also which is coming, the COEs like you are also involved. I got to know from meeting that upcoming centers, those center can serve to the industry, to the specific problem what industry has. So certainly there is a kind of consortium should be happening, the kind of more deliberation should be happening, and I would urge to the industry there should be open when they are coming to the centers to fill the gap. Basically, the first to believe that if we believe that something can happen, if you see the people and the facilities, then we should work together, frame the problem and have a collaborative approach. You see, you were saying yourself, everywhere you see the Indians, whenever any technology is coming out or any product is coming out globally. I worked myself basically in 12 years and outside the country in Switzerland, setting up the factories. And everywhere you will see that one. What is that one? Is a collaborative approach. That has to happen in this country. That is my view, Dr. Raja.
Thank you. Thank you. I think, I just wanted to wrap up, this session and hand it over to Dr. Ashwini Agarwal, my good friend. I think the objective for this, at least in my mind, the takeaways are, how do we take advantage of this great opportunity, like what Mr. Pillai said, right? We are at an inflection point, and big companies like Vedanta are stepping in, and they do have the financial muscle and the patient capital, I call it, right? It will take a longer time to recover. And then you have players like the Applied, well-wishers, and a lot of Indians at very high positions, well-wishers to make this happen. So I would say, all the stars are aligned in that sense, right? And government also, realizing that, for stability and the regulations and so on, right? Every day they're talking about how they can fine tune this better and better, right? I saw in the news today about the labor, right? Our IT minister is going to talk about the labor minister about, streamlining on the labor side of things as well, because, when we have large manufacturing companies, the regulation part and compliance and so forth. So I think, everything is lining up. In this process, right now, my hope is, the focus on the SMEs needs to be very, very, very critical to our success. And I think, some of this will become very large companies over time as well. Because when I see, the success of Taiwan and so on, right, they're all very homegrown companies, right? There's TSMC, there is ASC, they're very large, UMC and so forth, right? They're all, homegrown companies, right? So I think, there is a very good opportunity for homegrown companies out of India as well. Very, very exciting times, and thanks for giving this opportunity, and thanks for all the panelists. Over to you, Ashwini.
Thank you, Raja. I think this has been a pretty exciting panel. I really appreciate the panelists for their thoughts, and let me conclude with the following summary. So first of all, you captured it absolutely right. I think the stars are lining up quite nicely. And if I take the Porter's diamond model on the competitiveness of nations, I think one of the key things that is there is chance, serendipity, or destiny. And I think somewhere the conditions are a lot better than what it was before. Last decade, we have moved from absolute zero to somewhere where we can take the lead and get our high-tech industry in. And that is the most promising message for today. The second key thing which did come out is that the government's really put together a program which seems to be consciously trying to address the industry needs and catalyze the creation of these industries. So if I take yet one more factor for enabling industry in the country, demand conditions is supposed to be one such factor. And they are actually looking at an India Semiconductor mission, which is aiming to integrate the complete process of creating that sustainability for the industries, not just by giving subsidy. I think their biggest promise is that they are looking at creating an integrated approach, a mission mode approach to enabling this industry, which actually turns out from starting from the end customer demand to translate into design, to translate into a die, to translate into a package, a device, and ultimately a final end customer integrated product. Demand. So they are trying to turn the wheel. And again, I think the conditions in this are perhaps the best in the last decade, because we have our AMS, we have our end market shipping out, which can, when properly aggregated, create the fuel on which the companies can come in. If you hear Mr. Pilay's message, if there is a larger path coming in, they will come in. And actually, that is what is the key enabler of industry. It is actually the end customer demand. If that can be enabled, the capital will come after it. And I think this is a key condition which the government is enabling. The government's also enabling the factory condition. So you have Sudhir actually talking of the center of excellence. And let me actually turn it around and say it is actually the center of innovation, because you have to go and see what's being done out there. They're creating people capacity, they're creating background IP, and they're creating the talent support, which would be required by these large projects when they come in the country. So I think that is again a factor which is falling in place at this point of time. We have Vedanta. Vedanta is an amazing company. I have been seeing it for the last decade. I have been interacting actually from 2011. Okay, was the first manager from Vedanta who came to me that they wanted to set up a display fab. I don't know if you know that, Pranavji, but that is the reality. So for you, I must compliment the management. For you, this has been a dream that you have tenaciously kept inside. And perhaps the conditions are not right initially, but I think you'll make it happen this time. So this is a dream which has just not died down, not for me, not for your management, not for India. I think it's likely to take shape, get actualized this time around. The last thing is something which Elsina and Raja have really talked up today, and that is the related and supporting industries. Okay, that's a key factor of success for competitiveness. And I would like to take a few minutes on it. There is actually, if you take a look at, there are few issues which plague an industry, an ancillary industry, to speak, if it wants to come into this area. First, they have to make the product to the right quality. Okay, it's not that the product is not being made in. For example, acids which are required in these processes could be made in India. There could be other chemicals which would be made in India. India has a vast chemical industry. But the semiconductor or the display manufacturing grade quality is absolutely different. You know, and to get that high level of purity that is demanded by these sectors is something which is what they have to upgrade their plants to. Okay, if they decide to get into that niche area and look at getting into it with that additional investment, you know, they will run into a second problem. That is, how do they get the initiating orders? Because there is a very stringent qualification process that is there in the industry. Just because you're making a product of the right quality, you're not likely to get sustainable orders easily. You have to have it at the right price. Assuming that you have got all the other factors in control, the government support, whatever, subsidies, so costs actually a little more rationalized. The fact is you still have to compete and you have to get a toehold. It's not that easy. So you need actually the initial orders and you need the hand-holding support. I think the opportunity out here is very simple. Applied, for example, looked at it and said that we have over $3 billion worth of procurement that we do in Asia Pac for our factories across the world. Just the Asia Pac quantum of purchase is about $3 billion. And we have said that we will try and get in the near term a vendor development program established for India, where we'll get, let us say, a short-term target of 1,000 crores a year. And then in the year 20, we went and conducted workshops in some states to see if there was talent that was available that we could actually upgrade to what we required. We looked at areas and we found gems in areas like ceramics, in very special assemblies for semiconductor sector, and in certain types of materials. So when we actually looked at it, the next stage was how do we actually get these people to upgrade, invest into our interest areas. And we talked to them about the opportunity. Yes, we are handholding them on the required upgradation. We are actually giving them the opening orders so that they can actually have the demand commit on which they will actually look at establishing their investments. And we have worked back with the governments, both state and central, to see if some of these products can actually find their way into specs type of programs. So if the objective is to create a semiconductor product or a display product, you know, while what we are doing is not going to create everything that Pranavji is asking for, I'm sure. But in our own small way for our own industry, what we have done is we have said that we will actually see if we can get a procurement from India and try and create those initial companies who can then evolve as flagships for other, reference points for other companies to come in. And like I said, we have gone through that process. 3 companies have been qualified by our global procurement. Some of them are going into a specs process. And yes, an Indian entities will come up, and they're not going to come up for a demand in India. They're going to come up for a demand on a larger platform in the world. And they will go and serve not just applied materials, eventually with the reference that they are getting of an applied material as a customer base, semiconductor as a customer base. I think some of those companies will actually grow into other high-tech sectors. So that is a very exciting promise. There is, as some of you actually shared out in the last few minutes in the panel, a tremendous depth and talent in our country. We sometimes get overwhelmed with what we get from abroad. Okay, let me share. The ceramics vendor that was shortlisted, so nice, so soft-spoken, a very small industry, first-time entrepreneur. Okay, and his product is getting used in our space program. And his product was more competitive than what you would normally get from abroad, with a quality which you think can come up to our standards, the industry standard. So really speaking, one of the key messages I want to leave for Elcina members is, there is promise. Don't give up hope. Don't think that this is, something out of the world. As a nation, we have our own space program. We have our own nuclear program. There's no reason why we can't make a TV, and no reason why we can't make our semiconductors. It's actually what we believe that is what will make it happen. So I think, by and large, an exciting panel discussion. Really enjoyed being with all the fellow panelists and hearing them out. The work is cut out. Pranavji, please put up the fab. Let's talk separately. And let's see what we can do to make it happen. Sudhirji, twist the arms of your global. Tell them something is happening. Please keep your ear on the ground. Yeah. Something will happen. Yeah. Sudhirji, pump up your innovation at IITK. And Mr. Lee, I'm telling you, watch out. There's a big opportunity here. Plan to come to India. Cheers.
Great.
And Raja, of course, your project. Make it happen.
Thank you.
We've been living that dream too long also.
Raju,
over to you.
Yeah, Mr. Goyal. Raju sir, for you.
Right, sir. Thank you so much. I have only, I'll be very honest, I've heard only about 50-60% of the something else I was doing in between and feeling very guilty about it because I'm missing opportunity. But still, I think I have learned something. I've learned a lot from what I've heard. There is no need for me to praise the panel because we all know that this panel is really excellent. We're really covering a very diverse field. Dr. Raja said in the beginning. So there are a few questions here. I am sure if you have seen that, but for example, there are like which Gen 8.5 or better display technology Vedanta has finalized, and who is the technology provider? So that is one question here. Dr. Raja, can you see these questions? The other one is fab requires continuous energy with 100 megawatt capital plant, 100 megawatt
Power
supply, whatever energy power supply, lots of water.
Power supply.
etc. What are the requirements for the locations in India, or what are the possible locations? Third one is, do we have technology for a fab, fab of ICs, OSAT kind of business? So I'll just leave these questions, and maybe Dr. Raja, you can, or some of the panelists can answer them.
I would like to answer the point 3. I'd like to answer the point 3 right now.
Okay.
So the question is, do we have technology for fab of ICs, OSAT, etc.? Let me tell you. We have semiconductor complex in Chandigarh, and we don't have anything to be defensive about. That is a strategic lab, but it is operating like a mini IDM. They create their designs there, they create their dies there, they create their packages there, they create devices there. And they are actually fueling our space program and our strategic requirements. So there's a lot of time this issue comes up that, hey, that is a 180 nanometer fab. There's nothing to be shy of, because the chips they are making are for radiation hardened application. They're for the defense application. So they have to be off. They have to address the high EMP stringent requirements that are there in those conditions, those operating environments. So what they are doing is absolutely mainstream for those type of chips. If you go to Radiation Hardened Society of US website, you'll find there are 350 nanometer fabs that are there in that space. Why are we being defensive of a 180 nanometer fab? And this is actually, technology which has not been given to them by the Israelis. They have created a part of it on their own. So we as Indians can do it. A lot of time we come up with these issues that, we have issues on water, and, all these are, questions raised by naysayers. I keep on saying Singapore does not have its own drinking water. It has fabs there. Okay, we need to actually play it intelligently. There is a lot of naysayers on this plane. If you think organizations like Vedanta would actually look at putting $15 billion on the table without having a view on water, I think we would be making a mistake. We would really be doing them a lot of disservice on their capacity to plan for such things. Back to you.
I think Pranav, you can answer the question number 1 on the display.
Yeah, I think one was on technology. So, thank you, Ashwini. You helped me also to answer that part. See, on the technology, as I can tell you, there are 2 dominant technologies. One is OLED and other one is LCD. If you look at the large screen applications, large in this industry means 10-inch and above segment. They are typically on the LCD space, and the smaller inch size, which is typically mobile applications, or less than 8-inch. They are right now on OLED. But even if you look at Indian context, almost dominant market is on LCD, even on the small segment. So there is sufficient market available for next 10-15 years, and LCD as a technology would be here to stay. OLED is a new technology which has come up, very restricted technology today. So to start with, we are going with LCD technology plant. And maybe after 2 phases, 3 phases, we can look at migrating to other technology after 10 years. Technology partner we have, but I'll not be able to announce the name because of the confidentiality. And the other resources, whatever people are saying in terms of power, water, absolutely there is nothing to be afraid of. Vedanta, in its own capacity today, operates a class 10 clean room for our own fiber optic cable plant for last 10 years, 15 years. Vedanta has all the processes which are very, very power dependent. So, and we haven't had any such a failure. Either we had a backup source or we have a double, triple redundancy circuits. And today, if you ask me, the power scenario at 400 kV, 220 kV is extremely good in India. I mean, many states offer you, uninterrupted kind of power. these are all manageable, as Ashwini rightly said, and I would only say to add to that, you need to have a resolve. That's all. All these problems are surmountable. Whatever constraints we have, they are only in the mind. First, if we make up our mind, you will find solutions. I think that's a brief message. Thanks.
Dr. Raja, can I say something?
Please.
With your permission. I mean, I'm not asking a question, but it is a question in my mind. How do we take this forward? Will it be, there is already demand in the country, right? The demand is growing. We have a big population. Our income is growing. The demand is not an issue, right? And we can always buy servicing that. Will this industry grow? Let us say, the way the company like Sahasra has come up as a medium scale IC packaging plant, assembly test plant, or will it be driven by a large company like Vedanta coming up and then driving the whole ecosystem? Okay, and Vedanta is also talking about only display right now. There are other types of fabs which can be there. So that, I mean, we took 20 years to develop our Tejas aircraft. Finally, it is there, and now it is. It had various types of problems, etc. It was a very, very complex thing. So I mean, something possibly equally complex requires a lot of long-term capital. Requires the larger players to kind of carry the smaller players with them. There is so much in this. I mean, which I can only imagine as somebody being in the industry. So what is going to drive it? What should be? There has to be some strategy that the government. Because the government is. I mean, I'm not being critical of anybody, but the government wants to do something, but it is still kind of groping a little bit as to which is the best way to go forward. So should we have like 10, 20 ATMP plants first, which are able to source the chip from somewhere and package it here, and then let the demand for the chip grow or something like that, or where a fab drive? Or is, I mean, this is not so much a question, but just something that is in my mind as to what is the future. I'm trying to foresee the next 10 years or 5 years.
No, I think everybody is.
We're out of time here. Sorry. Yeah.
But just to wrap up, right? I think the question about talent and whether we can do it in India without a fab and other industries. So it's been proven, right? You don't need to have a fab to do an OSAT or to some other industry. So I know we should not find excuses, right? We should not find excuses saying, hey, I need to have fab before I do this or this and that, right? So I think I'm a very market driven. I believe in the market driving the business and so forth, right? So I think it should be very market driven. The other thing, so from a talent standpoint, right? We have extremely, our diaspora is everywhere, right? They're in design in the US and in the manufacturing. I mean, IIT Bombay is a very, very good source for TSMC, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So our guys are there everywhere, right? Helping the world, if you may, right? So helping ourselves, to build companies, right? So I don't think it's a challenge. But I think, particular to the question that Raju posed, right? So there are two ways of building this, right? If you look at what Mr. Lee said, the government of Korea, right? Basically supports this, 3-4 large companies, and then they in turn, try to support this, right? So, and it could be a success or maybe a failure model, right? The bigger companies are successful, but the smaller companies are not, right? And smaller companies remain small, right? And they are kind of dependent on these large companies, right? So that's a model, right? The other model that you see in Taiwan or China also, right? You see, companies coming out of nowhere, right? So if you look at some of these Chinese companies that are in OSAT business today, did not exist, right? Did not exist 20, 25 years ago, right? They're brand new companies, right? You can take, Huawei, for example, right? I mean, it didn't exist, right? And then it just comes out, right? It's not a government, very government related as well, but they built a new company out of this, right? So those two models, right? What is fit for India? I don't know, but I think in the Indian context, right? In the cultural and the trust and so forth, right? I think it very likely it's going to go through the larger companies, the government support and all that, right? Because, being a democracy, right, it's easier to justify, right? Why we give, certain amount of recognition for a large company versus a smaller company, unknown company and so on, right? I don't think, whether it's a state government or the central governments, right, are ready to go pump in, a huge amount of money in a startup, which could be the revolution for the future, right? So it's very unlikely. So I think our model would be that, the feed through will be through the larger companies, right? Be it local or foreign, right? And then, so how do we build a model where the smaller companies take advantage of it and become, a space of excellence themselves, right? So I think that would be probably the way to go. And, it's time will tell. But I think, so with that, I think, Raju, I think, everybody needs to.
Yes, yes.
Here, so,
No, definitely.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, please. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Sanjay ji.
It was a very interesting discussion we had today. It was very enlightening for all the participants on the webinar, and I believe we have more than 300 participants today, and it is very encouraging that we had a very successful show. Special thanks to Dr. Rajamanikam for conducting this panel and giving a very great insight to everyone. Mr. Lee, it's time at 8:30 in Korea, and thanks for staying back for so long. Mr. Sudhir Kumar, Mr. Amrit Marwani, Mr. Pranav, Mr. Prasad, Mr. Sudhir Pillai, and Dr. Ashwini Agarwal, never the least. We'll thank you very much for making this panel discussion very interesting, and we look forward to engaging with you all in future times, and wish you all the best for everything. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. And it's a very special thanks to
much.
EFY. Very special to EFY for hosting this platform and creating this value thing and being our partners. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Okay,
Raja sir.
thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.